In 1979, President Jimmy Carter invited Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt, and Menachem Begin, the prime minister of Israel, to Camp David to try to negotiate peace between Israel and Egypt. At issue was the Sinai Desert, and these two countries had been at war for decades about this piece of land. Every U.S. president has tried to negotiate peace in the Middle East. This was Carter's best attempt to see if there was some path to peace between these two countries. After days of very, very hard work, it appeared as though there wasn't progress being made. People were very frustrated. In fact, both parties had suggested that it was time for them to pack up and go home. Carter wasn't ready to give up yet, but he didn't exactly know where to go. But he knew that he had to keep the parties there and in conversation if there was going to be a chance for peace. Carter remembered that early on in the process, Menachem Begin had asked that Jimmy Carter sign and autograph some pictures to his grandchildren. And so as history recounts the story, Jimmy Carter took those pictures personally to the cabin where Menachem Begin was staying. As he knocked on the door and the prime minister came to the door and they exchanged in conversation and President Carter presented these pictures to Menachem Begin, it was in that moment, a relatively emotional moment for both of these world leaders, that they realized that the peace that they were negotiating for was not a peace just for them and their generation, but was a peace that hopefully one day would be enjoyed by their grandchildren. It was in that moment that they recommitted to the process, that they decided to stick it out a little longer to see if any progress could be made. Again, Carter got the commitment, but he didn't know exactly where to go with the conversation. It had been a struggle up until this point. And so Carter took President Anwar Sadat on a walk around Camp David, and he finally started asking some different questions. He said, what is it about the Sinai Desert that is so important to the nation of Egypt? And President Sadat said that for Egypt it was about sovereignty. For generations, the Egyptian flag had flown over the Sinai Desert, and that his country couldn't imagine a day when that wasn't part of sovereign Egypt. President Carter learned something. This idea of sovereignty was important to the Egyptians. President Carter went and had a very similar conversation with Menachem Begin, asking him the same question. What is so important about the Sinai Desert to the nation of Israel? And Menachem Begin said, Mr. President, you have to understand that piece of land is our buffer. That's what provides us security against Egypt. My country can't imagine a day where we wouldn't have that buffer in place. It is critically important to us feeling secure as a nation. Now, as Carter heard these two world leaders describe why the Sinai Desert was important, he realized that their reasons didn't necessarily clash. The fact that Egypt wanted sovereignty and Israel wanted security, well, that created an opportunity for these leaders to get creative on how they might achieve everything that everyone wants and do so in a way that can achieve peace. And so in a very simplistic way, what history knows as the Camp David Peace Accords are these. And that is that Egypt, so long as it removes all of its military weapons, can fly its flag over the Sinai Desert for as long as it wants to. Now, it doesn't seem like a real complex solution. It was a very tough road getting there. But here's what happened. As a result of going below the line and understanding the party's interest, and then coming up with a creative solution based on those interests, Carter And these leaders were able to achieve a peace that has lasted for decades. As far as I know, there's been very few shots fired between Egypt and Israel since the Camp David Accords back in the late 1970s. This was a lasting peace because it achieved what both sides were looking for. This idea of going below the line, whether it's in a business transaction or in an organizational dispute, or whether it's playing out on the world stage, this process is absolutely critical to generating very elegant solutions to the problems that you will face. And so I hope, as you seek to become a more savvy negotiator, that you will quickly look to explore people's interest, and you will begin to think creatively in collaboration with them about how you can respond to those interests in a way that addresses the issue, but also satisfies what's really important to people. Jimmy Carter, thank you for that incredible lesson of the value of going below the line.